Quarterwags really ran it as a family organization. Good or bad, it was a family-run business.
Why it changed hands, I couldn't tell you. And when we were, didn't pay attention to any of the politics, of the racetrack itself. As long as the doors were open, we were there.
John Holstein was not happy because of the cash loss, I think. And Terry was trying to run it more the bottom line was the bottom line.
Terry came out of the sports car club. So Terry, I don't think, knew a modified from a pogo stick when he came in. Outside of the year he did PR.
Terry worked as a PR guy for the Quarterways the last year they had, so we got to know him, and then the next year he came in and took it over.
John and Terry were friends, I guess.
John Holstein asked me if I would run it. It was our intention that I'd be there a couple of years, get it pointed in the right direction, and go on and do something else. Early on, I get a phone call from John Brower Sr., and he said, "Hey, I understand you're taking over at the track. I don't know if you know, but my family was involved there for years." I said, "Yeah, I've heard your name, I've met your son, whatever." "Well, me and my partner Dave Shippey would like to take you to lunch." So I said, "Sure, I'll go to lunch." So they basically were doubting Thomases. How did you come out of nowhere and get handed the keys to this racetrack? What the heck have you ever done that would prepare you for this?
I've always known Terry, he's a draught guy, and so I knew him. Actually, his mother was a teacher at Fitch where I went to school, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I knew Terry and I was comfortable with him coming in, but there was the bulk of the competitors that really didn't know who Terry was.
Nobody really knew him, or at least I didn't know of him, and it was all kind of new to me.
Brower and Shippey, they really grilled me for a good couple of hours, and they, just wanted to know what it was. And they started. I said, "Well, how would you do it? How did you do this?" And I kind of turned it on them and said, and so I was a sponge. I just soaked up on the stuff. And at the end of it, they were, they more or less said, "Okay, I think we underestimated you. You got a little bit more moxie for this job as you like." But the reason I remembered is I said, "Well, guys, to prove to you that I have what it takes to be a good race promoter, I chose the restaurant. I didn't realize they didn't take charge cards, and I don't have any cash, so you're paying the bill. So what better promoter is there than me?" And that's kind of how we got started. Shortly thereafter, he's at the racetrack with me, and he says, "Hey, Teddy Christopher's here tonight." He says, "Oh, wait a minute, you don't even know who Teddy Christopher is, do you?" So I had heard the name, but he was right. And then he took me over and introduced me. And John Brower Sr. would offer me input either in a critical way or a supportive way throughout my career there. And we didn't always agree, but he changed the schedule. He said, "I've seen promoter after promoter in this place try to open early and then go dark for a few weeks, and then they decide to race and it rains for 5 weeks." He said, "Why don't you just open and just go straight through?" So he's kind of the author of the enormously long schedule, because he convinced me to try that. And once I got addicted to it, I could never find the courage to shorten it up.
I think he promoted the track a little different, and I think we got more people out of it coming in the stands.
Everything was more mandatory with Terry. You got to do this. This is mandatory. That's mandatory, meaning if you got to bring your cars out for opening day it was mandatory that you had your car on a start-finish line, and just the word mandatory got used more often.
Terry and I had a chat. He would run the drivers' meetings, and after half a dozen drivers' meetings, he had his polarized Ray-Bans on and up there, shouting out his stuff. And I went over to him and I said, "You got to take the glasses off. Everybody thinks you're really mean. Whatever word I used." And we laugh about that all the time. He had to soften his stance up a little bit.
I didn't know him, but one thing I liked about him instantly was he seemed to have big plans. And, part of you when you hear that is always, oh boy, because everybody's got big plans, whether you're going on your first date with a girl or, buying your first car, everything's great.
The track would not have survived that era had Billy not been part of the team. not only was he great with the racers, whether on the flag stand or as a pit steward, and then ultimately race director, but he also was my Mr. Fix-It. The place was very neglected, and he did electrical and plumbing and carpentry, and he just solved more technical problems. The guy can fix anything. There are several people that played key roles in making what I still view as a success of my tenure there as a promoter. We could talk about the unsuccessful portions later if you want, but one of the reasons why it worked as well as it did was because of people who were willing to help me. And I think to some degree my willingness to accept their help. Pete Zanardi is high on that list, probably the most significant.
Friday nights I was running the press box at Stafford, and then Saturday nights I was running the press box at Waterford.
So he worked for Stafford at the time I took over Waterford. He would offer me advice, write some things for me, not put his name on them. It got noticed a little bit more that he was doing it. I think that helped end his relationship at Stafford, and then he came on board and worked with us almost full time for a number of years.
I think the popularity of the Bowl in the 90s, Pete Zanardi has to be given a lot of credit for it, because he had a lot of friends in the writers, and there was a full press box every week. The New London Day, Norwich Bulletin.
You understand one thing, it was Terry's racetrack. So whatever success or failure went on while I was there, it was Terry's team to run.
He was there right from the beginning, and an absolute devoted friend of the track, and a devoted friend of mine, and we not only did good work, but we had real fun along the way, and I miss that a great deal. My goal was to be there for 95 and 96. 97 came, they convinced me to stay another year. 98, I had down payment money on buying a business for myself when the owners came to me and said, "We heard you were going to go do that. How about you lease it from us and run it yourself?" And I said, "I'll do that if you give me an option to buy it." So I leased it starting in 98. And then, it took me until September of 2000 to put together a deal to be able to buy it.
What I remember about, again, interacting with people in the sport, the Arute family, the fabric of that family was racing. Don Honig, he bled short track racing and golf, And when I met Terry, I could see that the difference I saw in Terry between those guys was I didn't think Terry bled short track racing. Terry was a businessman to me who loved racing, but he was a businessman first. So there was good and bad that came with that.
See, I remember the first banquet I went to, 2002. They had one rain out this year. Terry Eames tells everybody they had a great year. Now, the next year, they had 5 rainouts in a row. And all of a sudden, you started hearing the rumors.
There had been rumors that Terry was going to sell the place. There was some issues business-wise with the group that owned the Speedbowl. And I knew Terry had been looking at his options.
There were so many different stories floating around that you didn't know who to believe.
There was all kinds of rumors flying around and what was going to happen, and nobody really knew anything.
I didn't have a very happy personal life at the time. My ex-wife came into the business and hated it. So when you work in a very challenging business, you're fighting Mother Nature, there's disappointments day in and day out, and you go home to a situation where it's like, I don't know why you even keep that place. It's very hard to stay upbeat, about the business that you're in. I had taken some option money one winter from a real estate developer on the place. At that point in time, I was unhappy enough that I looked at selling it for whatever use, whether it was to somebody that wanted it as a racetrack or to develop it.
That's when the first development package that Terry, when Terry was originally going to sell to a developer.
I knew he had at some point signed an option to sell the place.
I told it to somebody in confidence. They told Sean Corshane about it.
It just seemed like everybody was tense a little bit, didn't know about the future of the place.
Yeah, I was really worried because he hadn't really heard much about this yet.
So it was really the first time that a sale could be, and not keep it as a racetrack.
And who knew at that point the horror story that it was beginning.
That was really the beginning of the, the dark cloud being over there that I just couldn't chase away. The Speedbowl was the kind of place that every winter there were rumors that it was not going to open that coming spring. I forget whether it was 02 or 03, somewhere in that era. We lost 5 Saturdays in a row. And, business was never quite the same after that. When you had an extended closure, people found out that, being at home with their wife on Saturday night wasn't as bad as they thought. Or bowling is a decent hobby and it goes on rain or shine. And at the time, business appeared to be just on the climb. We doubled the business from 95 to 2000. We doubled the business. But, looking back on it, we had that whole Earnhardt versus Gordon rivalry. And, at the top level, the sport was growing in leaps and bounds. And even though short track promoters around the country said, whatever NASCAR is doing doesn't do a thing for us, well, guess what? It was proven that it did, because when NASCAR turned down, the short track business turned down. But in that era, rainouts really, at a time when I really needed every dime of cash flow, rainouts really screwed me up.
Obviously, there had been rumors that there was some issues business-wise with the group that owned the Speedbowl, and I knew Terry had been looking at his options. I knew he had at some point signed an option to sell the place, which he had later told me he was very confident that the company he was involved in was not going to want the place, and he looked at it as a win-win for him and his company.
I knew that those developers were not going to exercise the option. Indeed, the reason why I had taken the $100,000 from them was basically calling their bluff. Oh, we want to buy an option on the property to develop it for residential. Well, A, it wasn't zoned for residential, and B, I didn't think the market was there. But they wanted to do it. So I said, if you give me non-refundable $100,000 and sign a non-disclosure agreement, I'll let you go and investigate it. And the sales price was decent if they did decide to go through with it. In that era, this guy, Gene Arganese, had announced that he was going to do a major NASCAR track, to do cup events. All right, and he first tried to do it in North Stonington, and then he wound up in Plainfield with a dome over it. That was the concept. So he reached out to me because we knew some people in common and wanted me to consult for him. Well, it really was because he thought I had some sort of relationship with the powers to be at NASCAR, and he was hoping to get some kind of sub rosa promise that if I built this track in southeastern Connecticut, you'll bring a cup event there, which many stories have been written about how they just would not do that, but that was his concept. So he talked about, if we do this, we could bring the whole short track program to, under the dome. And I said, well, that could work, because confidentially, I've got guys that are saying they want to buy the place, so I might have it sold. So that could all sort of work together. We could do a short track program, on the infield of your big, I don't know what he was going to do, a mile track, a 3/4 mile track, under a dome. Well, he gets pressed for details by Corshane, and somewhere along the line, Corshane asked a question about, well, how was that going to affect Waterford? And he slips up, Gene does, and says, oh, well, Waterford's not going to be even there next year. It's sold to developers, which it clearly wasn't. Actually, my hopes were set on what happened, that I took their money, they decided not to go forward with the project, and we could continue to race. But now, of course, once the story is out there, I have to calm everybody down. And it caused, just the fact, the way the story got out caused a lot of trouble. I had worked with members of the press long before the Speedbowl, so I knew if he had the story and he's a real journalist, he's going to go with the story. So me going no comment or trying to lie to him wasn't going to work. I needed to let him interview me at that point and get as much of the truth out about the story as I possibly could.
Was there animosity towards Corshane for breaking that story?
For maybe 10 seconds, because here's how it went down. Pete Zanardi was one of maybe 3 people in my organization that knew about the option deal, and he called me and said, Corshane's got the story. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me, all right? And it caused me to doubt people like Pete and others on my crew because it was so closely held. It was me. I screwed up and told Gene Arganese. So.
Obviously, when you first hear about it, it's nerve-wracking because you want to race. You got money invested.
Somebody around me said, this is the beginning of the end because once you put that cloud over the place, you're just not going to get it off of there. And it did kind of have a permanence to it that no matter what you said, the seed was planted.